Part 1. Red Dust of Wyoming. The autumn wind carried more than dust through Red Bluff that October morning in 1883. It brought the acrid smell of coal smoke from the mines, the distant bellow of cattle, and something else trouble, riding in on iron-rimmed wheels. Eleanor Nora Galloway pressed herself against the weathered boards of Morrison's General Store, watching the mining company's wagon rumble past. 6 armed guards flanked a load of equipment bound for the hills, their rifles catching the weak morning sun. She'd learned to read danger in small things, the way men held their shoulders, how horses flicked their ears, the particular silence that fell over a street when powerful men passed through. At 22, Nora had already buried more family than most women twice her age. The fire that took her father's ranch still visited her dreams, orange flames dancing against a moonless sky, the screams of horses, her father's final words choked by smoke. That had been 2 years ago, 2 states away, but loss had a way of following a person like their own shadow. "You looking for work, Miss?" The voice made her jump. A stocky man in a stained apron stood in the doorway of Morrison's, studying her with the calculating look of someone who knew desperation when he saw it. "Depends on the work," Nora replied, straightening her travel-worn dress. Pride was a luxury she couldn't afford, but she held on to it anyway, like a lucky coin worn smooth by handling. "Cattle drives hiring cooks, leaves end of week for Cheyenne. $1 a day plus found." $1 a day. Enough to eat, maybe save a little. Nora nodded. "Where do I sign on?" "Grady's camp, south of town. Ask for Jake Clemens, he's the trail boss." The man's eyes softened slightly. "You might want to mention you can handle yourself. These drives ain't Sunday socials." Nora touched the hidden pocket in her skirt where her father's Derringer rested. "I can handle myself." The walk through Red Bluff told its own story. Once a hopeful settlement, the town had been swallowed by the mining boom. Hastily built shacks crowded against false front businesses. The original Main Street had been widened to accommodate the constant flow of ore wagons, their wheels cutting deep ruts that turned to rivers of mud when it rained. The Blue Lark Saloon dominated one corner, its painted sign featuring a bird that looked more like a drunken crow than any lark Nora had ever seen. She was passing the saloon when the doors swung open and 2 men stumbled out, continuing an argument that had clearly started inside. "Told you not to mention Willow Valley," one hissed. "Silas wants it mapped by winter. How am I supposed to—" They noticed Nora and fell silent. One man, wearing the brass badge of a deputy marshal, gave her a look that made her skin crawl. She ducked her head and walked faster, but not before catching sight of something that made her heart skip, a leather portfolio tucked under the deputy's arm. "Willow Tract," stamped in gold on its cover. Willow Valley. Her father had mentioned it once, during one of his rare, expansive moods. "If things go bad," he'd said, staring into their campfire. "There's a place in Wyoming, Willow Valley. Shoshone showed it to me years back. Good water, sheltered, far from the railroad schemes and land grabbers." Now someone named Silas was mapping it. In Nora's experience, when powerful men mapped places, common folks lost homes. The cattle camp sprawled along Sage Creek, a modest cluster of wagons and tents that would be home to 30 men and 4,000 longhorns for the next month. Nora found Jake Clemens exactly where Morrison's man had said, standing knee-deep in horses, checking hooves with the practiced efficiency of a man who'd spent more nights under stars than roofs. "I heard you're looking for a cook," she called out. Clemens straightened, revealing a face weathered into permanent squint lines. "You ever cooked for 30 hungry cowboys, Miss?" "I've cooked for 20 hungry ranch hands while fighting a grass fire," Nora replied. "The beans didn't burn." That earned her a brief smile. $1 a day. You supply your own bedroll. We got a chuck wagon, needs organizing, last cook lit out for the gold fields. Can you handle a team? 4 in hand or 6? 4 Morgans, mostly broken to harness. He studied her more carefully. "You running from something?" Miss, I don't need trouble following my drive. Just running to something. Nora said, a fresh start. Fair enough. We all got our reasons. He pointed toward a wagon with a canvas-covered box built onto its bed. That's your kitchen. Supplies are already loaded. We move out Friday dawn. Nora had started toward the wagon when a commotion erupted near the creek. A rider on a spotted pony was having words with 3 men in mining company uniforms. The horseman sat easy in his saddle, but Nora noticed how his right hand rested casual-like near his hip, where a hunting knife's handle showed above his belt. I don't care what, mister. Devereaux wants surveyed, the rider was saying. His voice carried the careful pronunciation of someone who'd learned English as a second language. This is open range. Your boss has no claim here. Mister, Devereaux's got interests all through these parts. One of the miners replied, smart folks learn to accommodate those interests. Then I must not be smart folks. The lead miner took a step forward. Listen here, breed. The word hung in the air like a challenge. Nora saw the rider's shoulders tense, saw Jake Clemens moving to intervene, and made a decision that probably wasn't smart but felt right. She walked directly between the two groups, pulling her father's pocket watch from her dress. Hey, Mr. Clemens, she called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. If I'm starting Friday, I'll need to inventory supplies today. This gentleman, she nodded toward the rider, promised to show me which merchants in town deal fair with the camp. Didn't you, sir? The rider's dark eyes met hers, reading the situation in an instant. That's right. Miss Campbell's for flour, Morrison's for coffee and beans. The miners looked confused by the sudden change in dynamics. The lead man scowled. This ain't over, Red Horse. Never thought it was. The rider replied calmly. The miners retreated with the particular swagger of men who'd lost face, but couldn't figure out exactly how. Once they were out of earshot, the rider dismounted in one fluid motion. I didn't need rescuing, he said, but there was amusement in his voice. Neither did I. Nora replied. Guess we're even. Elijah Red Horse. He offered his hand like she was a man, direct and respectful. Folks call me Eli. Eleanor Galloway. Nora. His handshake was firm, calloused in the places that spoke of rope work and rifle use. You always jump into other people's fights, Miss Galloway. Only when they're unfair ones. 3-1 isn't sporting. No, he agreed. It's not. You really need to check supplies. Actually, yes, I wasn't lying about that. They walked back toward town. Eli leading his pony, a paint mare with intelligent eyes and a scar across her chest. The afternoon sun was already slanting low, painting Red Bluff in deceptive gold that almost made it look hospitable. You're new here, Eli observed. It wasn't a question. Fresh off yesterday's stage? I guide for hunting parties, scout sometimes for folks needing safe passage. Born in these parts, back when they were still honest-to-God frontier. And now, he gestured at the mining equipment being unloaded at the freight depot. Now, men like Silas Devereaux decide the frontier needs civilizing. Their kind of civilizing. Anyway. Silas Devereaux. I heard that name today. Eli's expression hardened. Stay clear of him if you can. Man collects 2 things mining claims and other people's misfortune. Word is he's got his eye on Willow Valley now. Nora's step faltered. What's special about Willow Valley? Good water, sheltered grazing, and according to Devereaux's paid geologist, maybe a vein of silver. Course. There's also the fact that a dozen families are trying to homestead there. Shoshone, Chinese, a few white folks, some freed slaves from the war. Devereaux figures mixed communities don't have many friends in the territorial courts. They'd reached Campbell's store. Through the window, Nora could see sacks of flour stacked like fortifications. Is he right? Usually. But those folks in Willow Valley, they're stubborn. They've made something good there. Something. Eli paused, searching for words. Something worth protecting. That evening, Nora organized the chuck wagon by lantern light. The work was familiar, comforting, even checking the flour for weevils, testing the baking soda, counting coffee beans into portions. She'd done this countless times on her father's ranch, creating order from chaos, making sure everyone would eat tomorrow. She was tying down the canvas when boot steps crunched behind her. Not Clemens's steady gait or Eli's near-silent tread. These steps had weight and authority behind them. Well, what do we have here? 3 men stood at the edge of the lantern light. The speaker wore a city suit that looked almost obscene against the rough camp backdrop. His companions were the miners from earlier. Chuck Wagon Cook, Mr. Devereaux. One of them supplied, the one who interrupted our conversation with that half-breed scout. Silas Devereaux stepped into the light, revealing a face that might have been handsome if not for the calculating coldness in his eyes. "Ma'am, I don't believe we've been properly introduced." "No need," Nora said, continuing to work. "I'm just passing through." Everyone's just passing through until they find a reason to stay. He picked up a can of peaches from her supplies, turning it over in his manicured hands. "These are from Morrison stock, expensive for a cattle drive cook." "Mr. Clemens provides well for his crew." "Does he now?" Devereaux set the can down harder than necessary. "Tell me, Miss Galloway."
"Miss Galloway, you seem like an intelligent woman. Surely you understand the value of proper associations in a town like this."
"I understand the value of honest work." His smile was all teeth and no warmth. "Honest work, how refreshing. But sometimes, Miss Galloway, honest work isn't enough. Sometimes circumstances demand we make compromises." One of his men had circled around to her other side. Nora's hand drifted toward her skirt pocket. "For instance," Devereaux continued, "that Lakota scout you seem so friendly with, he's been telling lies about my business operations. Very unfortunate lies that could damage my reputation. It would be a shame if those lies were to spread through, say, a cattle camp full of loose-tongued cowboys. I don't carry tales." "I'm sure you don't. But just to ensure we understand each other." He nodded to his men. The one behind her grabbed for her arms. Nora had grown up with brothers, had wrestled calves and broken horses. She ducked under his grip, drove her elbow into his stomach, and heard the satisfying whoosh of air leaving his lungs. But the second man was faster, catching her wrist and twisting until she gasped. "Enough." Eli's voice came from the darkness beyond the wagon. He stepped into view, and this time his knife was in his hand, catching the lantern light along its edge. "Let her go," he said quietly. "Now." Devereaux laughed. "Or what you'll scalp us, please. Mr. Red Horse, we're civilized men here." "Then act like it." The moment stretched taut as a bowstring. Nora felt the grip on her wrist tighten, saw Eli shift his weight onto his back foot, ready to spring. Then Jake Clemens's voice boomed across the camp. "What in the blue blazes is going on at my chuck wagon?" The trail boss appeared with 6 cowboys at his back, all of them armed, all of them looking like they'd enjoy a fight to break the monotony of camp life. Devereaux's man released Nora's wrist. She rubbed it, glaring at him, memorizing his face thin, pockmarked, with a scar through his left eyebrow. "Just having a friendly conversation with your new cook," Devereaux said smoothly, "making sure she understands how things work in Red Bluff." "She's under my protection until Cheyenne," Clemens said. "Anyone has a problem with her. They got a problem with me and 30 armed drovers. That clear enough for you, Mr. Devereaux?" Crystal clear. Devereaux touched his hat brim to Nora, the gesture somehow more threatening than courteous. "Enjoy your cattle drive, Miss Galloway. Though I should mention the trail to Cheyenne passes some dangerous country. Accidents happen, even to protected cooks." He walked away, his men following like well-trained dogs. One of them, the scarred one, stopped to spit in the dirt near Eli's feet before leaving. "Pack your gear," Clemens said as soon as they were gone. "Both of you. We're moving the camp tonight." "The cattle aren't ready." one of the cowboys protested. They'll have to be. I know Silas Devereaux's type. He don't make idle threats. He turned to Eli. You hired on as a scout yet? No. You are now 40 and found to Cheyenne. Then you and Miss Galloway can light out for wherever seems safe. He looked between them. Unless I miss my guess, neither of you can afford to stay in Red Bluff after tonight. As the camp erupted into controlled chaos, cowboys rolling bedrolls, wranglers bringing in the remuda, Eli helped Nora secure the chuck wagon.
Thank you, she said quietly. Again.
You had it handled. Maybe, but backup never hurts. She paused, tying down a rope. What Devereaux said about lies, they're not lies. He's planning to take Willow Valley by any means necessary. Filed a mineral claim on land that's already been homesteaded. He figures if he can drive the families out before spring, possession will be 9/10 of the law. My father mentioned Willow Valley once, said it was safe. Eli looked at her sharply. Your father knew the valley. He knew someone who did, never said who. She finished the knot, tested it. Is it really worth all this trouble? You ever seen a place where people who don't match different colors, different languages, different gods all work together, share water rights without killing each other, help raise each other's barns and children? Nora shook her head. Neither had I, until Willow Valley. It's not perfect. Nothing is, but it's... He struggled for words again. It's what this country could be, instead of what it is. They worked in companionable silence until the wagon was ready. Around them, the camp transformed into a mobile unit with practiced efficiency. These men had done this before, many times. In an hour, there'd be no trace they'd ever been here except wheel ruts and cold fire pits. Mount up, Clemens called. We're pushing through the night. Want 20 miles between us and town by dawn. Nora climbed onto the wagon seat, taking up the reins of the 4-horse team. The Morgans shifted restlessly, sensing the urgency in the air. Eli swung onto his paint mare, moving to ride point. Miss Galloway, he called back, welcome to Wyoming territory. As the drive began its unexpected nighttime exodus, Nora felt something shift inside her chest. She'd come looking for work, for a new start. Instead, she'd found herself in the middle of something larger, a fight between what the West was becoming and what it could be. Behind them, Red Bluff's lights grew dim, swallowed by darkness and distance. Ahead, the trail stretched into uncertainty. But for the first time since the fire took everything, Nora felt something other than grief and survival instinct. She felt purpose. The stars came out one by one, ancient witnesses to another chapter in the land's long story. And somewhere ahead, beyond the dust and danger, Willow Valley waited a place her father had believed in, sight unseen. Now she understood why. Part 2, Tracks Across the Prairie. The third morning out from Red Bluff, Eli found Nora already awake, crouched by the chuck wagon's dropped tailgate, coaxing life from buffalo chips and sparse kindling. The pre-dawn air bit sharp, carrying the scent of sage and the distant promise of snow. Coffee'll be ready soon, she said without looking up. She'd learned to recognize his footsteps lighter than the cowboys, more deliberate than a man just wandering. No hurry. He hunkered down opposite the nascent fire, feeding it twists of dry grass. Storm coming. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe tonight. Nora glanced at the star-filled sky. How can you tell? Wind shifted 3 times since midnight. Horses are restless. And see that line of clouds building northwest. He pointed to what looked like a dark smudge on the horizon. Weather builds up against the bighorns, then rolls down like water from a burst dam. We should reach Poison Creek by noon. Will we have time to... A shout from the night guard cut her short. Then came the sound every trailhand feared, the low rumble of 4,000 cattle starting to move without permission. Stampede! The cry went up across the camp. Eli was already running for his horse. Stay with the wagon. But Nora had grown up on a ranch. She knew what stampedes could do: scatter supplies, destroy equipment, kill anyone caught in the path. She threw the coffee pot aside and leaped for the wagon seat, gathering the reins of her startled team. The rumble became thunder. In the gray pre-dawn light, she could see the dark mass of cattle flowing like a river burst its banks, heading straight for the supply wagons. Cowboys on horseback raced alongside, trying to turn the leaders, their shouts lost in the cacophony of hooves and bellowing cattle. Nora slapped the reins hard, turning her team perpendicular to the stampede's path. The Morgans, trained to steadiness, responded despite their fear. She drove them toward a low rise, the wagon bouncing dangerously over rough ground. A young rider, Tommy Sullivan, barely 18, was trying to turn a group of steers when his horse stepped in a prairie dog hole. Nora watched in horror as horse and rider went down, directly in the path of the charging herd. Without thinking, she turned the wagon again, driving at an angle that would put her between Tommy and the cattle. It was insane. It was necessary. "Tommy, grab on." The boy, stunned but not unconscious, managed to catch the wagon's side as she thundered past. He hauled himself up, clinging to the supply boxes as Nora whipped the team towards safety. Behind them, his horse scrambled up and limped away from the deadly path. They crested the rise just as the main body of the stampede swept past below, a dark river of flesh and horn that would have ground them to nothing. Nora's hands shook as she set the brake. "You saved my life," Tommy gasped, his face white as flour. "You'd have done the same." She helped him down, checking for injuries: a scraped knee, a wrenched shoulder, but nothing broken. "Go catch your horse." He didn't look too bad lame. As quickly as it had started, the stampede began to slow. The experienced hands had managed to turn the leaders into a mill, the cattle circling until their panic spent itself. In the growing light, Nora could see the damaged 2 wagons overturned, supplies scattered across a quarter-mile of prairie, but miraculously, no one killed. Eli appeared out of the dust on his paint mare, relief evident on his usually composed face. "Thought I told you to stay put." "Tommy would be dead if she had," Jake Clemens said, riding up. He looked haggard, dust caking the lines of his face. "That was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've seen in 30 years of driving cattle." "Little of both, probably," Nora admitted. Clemens studied the overturned wagons. "We'll lose half a day setting this right, maybe more." He turned to Eli. "What spooked them, night guard? Didn't see anything?" Eli dismounted, studying the ground where the stampede had started. After a moment, he held up something that caught the morning light: a small mirror, the kind city folks used. "Someone flashed this at the leaders, probably from that ridge." He pointed to a line of rocks perfect for concealment. "Wanted us delayed. Scattered, maybe." "Devereaux." Clemens spat the name like a curse. "Or his men. No way to prove it." Eli pocketed the mirror. "But if they're willing to risk killing drovers just to slow us down—" "They'll do worse," Nora finished. She thought of the scarred man who'd grabbed her wrist, the cold calculation in Devereaux's eyes. This is just the beginning. They spent the morning gathering scattered supplies and righting overturned wagons. Nora worked alongside the men, ignoring their initial protests. She'd earned something during the stampede, not quite acceptance, but respect. When she suggested a new way to secure the supply wagons against future incidents, they listened. By noon, clouds had built into a wall of slate gray stretching across the northwestern sky. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in an hour. "We need shelter," Eli told Clemens. "This won't be just rain. Nearest cover is Willow Creek Canyon, 8 miles west, but that's off our route. Better than getting caught in the open." Clemens made the call. They turned the herd west, pushing hard toward a line of breaks in the prairie. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of rain and something else, the metallic scent that preceded hail. They made the canyon just as the storm hit. Not rain, but dust, a rolling wall of dirt and debris that turned day to night. Nora pulled her neckerchief over her face, squinting through the assault of grit and wind. Visibility dropped to mere feet. "Circle up!" Clemen's voice barely carried over the howling wind. "Wagons on the windward side." It was chaos, men shouting, cattle bawling, horses fighting their riders. Nora wrestled her team into position, then scrambled to secure the wagon's canvas before it tore away. Sand and gravel pelted her like buckshot. Strong hands suddenly helped her with the ropes, Eli, appearing out of the brown darkness like a ghost. Together they lashed down everything loose, working by feel more than sight. "Inside!" he shouted against her ear. They crawled under the wagon just as the dust gave way to rain, not gentle drops, but a deluge that turned the ground to mud in seconds. Then came the hail. Chunks of ice the size of quail eggs hammering down with vicious force. Under the marginal shelter of the wagon bed, Nora and Eli pressed close, listening to ice pummel the canvas above. She could feel him shivering. They were both soaked through, the temperature still dropping. "Need to share heat," he said pragmatically. "That all right?" She nodded, and they arranged themselves back to back, sharing what warmth they had. It was oddly comforting, feeling another heartbeat against the storm's fury. "You've done this before," she observed. "Survived storms like this." "Once got caught in a blizzard near Devil's Tower. 3 days in a snow cave with nothing but a horse blanket and stubbornness." He paused. "Lost 2 toes to frostbite, but kept my life. My father used to say the land out here don't care about your plans. It'll kill you just as dead whether you're good or evil." "Smart man. What happened to him?" Nora was quiet for a moment, listening to the hail. "Fire. Someone burned our ranch. Dad died trying to save the horses." "I'm sorry." "Found wagon tracks later, away from the road. Heavy ones, like they'd been carrying coal oil barrels. Sheriff said it was probably an accident, sparks from a cook fire, but I know the smell of kerosene." She felt Eli tense. "You think it was deliberate?" "I know it was, just couldn't prove it. We had good water rights, refused to sell to some big cattle company. Month later," she shrugged, the movement tight with old anger. "Doesn't matter now? Can't bring him back?" "It matters," Eli said quietly. "Truth always matters, even when justice don't follow." The hail stopped as suddenly as it had started, replaced by steady rain. They waited another few minutes before crawling out to assess the damage. Several men sported bruises from hailstones. One wagon's canvas hung in tatters. But again, through luck or providence, no one had died. "We'll camp here tonight." Clemens decided. "This canyon's got some shelter, and the cattle need to settle." As men set about making camp in the mud and drizzle, Eli caught Nora's arm gently. "Want to learn something?" She followed him to where runoff had carved temporary streams in the canyon floor. He knelt, pointing to various plants growing in the protected spots. "Prairie turnips see the 3 leaves roots are good eating, like potatoes but nuttier. This here's buffalo berry, sour but full of good medicine for fever. And that," he indicated a sprawling plant with small white flowers, "is desert parsley. Seeds help with belly problems." "How do you know all this?" "My grandmother. She said the land provides everything you need if you know how to look." He dug up one of the turnips with his knife, brushing off the dirt. "Also helps to know what'll kill you. Like this." He pointed to a similar-looking plant. "Death camas. Looks almost like wild onion, but one bite'll have you seeing your ancestors." Nora studied both plants, memorizing the differences. "Your grandmother sounds wise. Died winter before last. Tried to teach me everything she knew, but..." He stood, looking out at the rain-washed prairie. Some things get lost between the teaching and the learning. Each generation holds a little less. That evening, with the storm past and stars emerging between ragged clouds, the camp settled into its routine. Nora prepared a simple meal with what supplies had stayed: dry beans, biscuits, and coffee strong enough to float a horseshoe. The men ate gratefully, too tired for their usual complaints about trail food. She was banking the cook fire when she noticed something tucked under a supply box, papers that must have blown there during the storm. Official-looking papers with surveyor's marks. Her heart jumped when she saw familiar words. Willow Valley Tract Mineral Assessment. Found something. Eli materialized beside her, his approach silent as always. She showed him the papers. His face darkened as he read. Survey markers already placed. Look. He pointed to a detailed map. They've divided the whole valley into claims, every water source, every decent pasture. But you said families were already homesteading there. Law says homesteaders have to prove up live on the land for 5 years. Make improvements. These mineral claims would supersede that if filed first. He folded the papers carefully. This is evidence. Proof of what Devereaux's planning.
Evidence only matters if someone listens, Nora said bitterly. I had wagon tracks, and nobody cared. The families in Willow Valley, they'll care. This gives them time to prepare. Maybe file their own papers first.
A shout from the night guard made them both turn. A lone rider approached through the darkness, hands raised to show peaceful intent. As he entered the firelight, Nora recognized him Liu Chang, a Chinese man who'd run a laundry in Red Bluff. Mr. Red Horse, he said, dismounting carefully. I bring warning. Eli stepped forward. What kind of warning? Man named McKean. Deputy Marshal, he rides to Sheridan with warrant. Says you stole horses. Kidnapped woman. Liu glanced apologetically at Nora. Says you force her against will. That's a lie, Nora said hotly. I know this. Many know this. But McKean has judge who signs whatever he brings. Liu pulled a letter from his coat. Maria at Blue Lark. She sends message to Valley people. They prepare for you. Eli read the message, his expression grim. They're not just coming for me. There's warrants for suspected rustlers and agitators in Willow Valley, vague enough to arrest anyone. When Clemens had joined them. Drawn by the commotion? McKean leaves tomorrow. 3 days to Sheridan, maybe 4 to Valley if weather holds. We're still a week out from Cheyenne. Clemens calculated. Can't push any harder without losing cattle. Eli looked at Nora. I need to ride ahead. Warn them. You'll need supplies, she said, already mentally cataloging what she could spare. Food, ammunition. What? We'll need supplies. You're named in that warrant too. Eleanor Galloway, wanted for questioning and theft and conspiracy. You stay with the drive. McKean arrests you the moment you reach Cheyenne. Nora felt the ground shift under her feet. In trying to escape one trouble, she'd ridden straight into another. Clemens cursed colorfully. I can't spare my scout and my cook. You can't afford to harbor fugitives either, Eli pointed out. McKean gets word you helped us. He'll impound your whole herd on suspicion. The trail boss looked like he'd bitten into something sour, but he nodded. Take what you need. I'll say you lit out in the night, stolen supplies and all. Make it look good. They worked quickly, loading a pack horse with essentials flour, salt, coffee, blankets, ammunition. Nora added her small medicine chest and the dried turnips Eli had gathered earlier.
This is my fault, she said as they saddled their horses. I shouldn't have interfered.
Stop, Eli's voice was firm. You did what was right. That's never the wrong choice, even when it costs us. Tommy Sullivan approached, leading Eli's paint mare and a sturdy bay gelding. For Miss Nora, he said shyly, Dusty here's steady and has bottom. Won't quit on you. I can't take your horse. You saved my life. Horse seems like small trade. The young cowboy grinned. Besides, Clemens already took the price out of my pay. Said it was worth it to see someone stand up to those mining company bastards. Others came forward, a canteen from one man, a rain slicker from another, trail bread wrapped in oilcloth. By the time they were ready to ride, half the camp had contributed something. Head for Inscription Rock first, Clemens advised. Then cut north through the Badlands. Harder going but less chance of meeting McKean's men. Nora looked back at the camp, the only safety she'd known in months. Thank you, all of you. Just remember us when you're settled somewhere. Clemens said gruffly, good cooks are hard to find. They rode out under a half moon, the storm-washed air crystal clear. Behind them, the cattle drive would continue its plodding progress toward Cheyenne. Ahead lay uncertainty badlands, lawmen, and a valley full of people preparing to fight for their homes. You sure about this? Eli asked as they cleared the first ridge. It's not too late to circle back. Head for California or Oregon. Nora thought of the survey maps, of families about to lose everything to legal trickery. She thought of her father, dying in smoke and flame because he'd refused to sell. I'm sure, she said. Someone needs to stand with those folks in Willow Valley. Might as well be us. They rode on through the night, two small figures against the vastness of Wyoming territory. Somewhere behind them, powerful men plotted. Somewhere ahead, a community prepared for siege. And in between, the ancient land waited with its own plans, storms and sanctuaries. Death and redemption, all mixed together like seeds in a prairie wind. Part 3, Willow Valley, where the wind changes seasons. The morning they reached Willow Valley, frost silvered the grass and the air tasted of coming winter. Nora's first glimpse of the settlement came as they crested Shepherd's Ridge, a scatter of buildings nestled in a natural bowl. Smoke rising from chimneys, fields stubbled with harvest remnants. It's beautiful, she breathed. It was more than beautiful. It was impossible. A Chinese-style house with upturned eaves stood next to a solid Norwegian log cabin. Beyond that, a traditional Lakota earth lodge squatted beside a frame house that could have been lifted from any Kansas town. Gardens spread between the buildings, fenced with styles as varied as their owners. Welcome to the crossroads, Eli said, but his voice carried tension. Let's hope we're still welcome. They descended slowly, allowing themselves to be seen. A rider broke from the settlement, galloping to meet them. As he drew closer, Nora saw it was a black man in his 40s, a Spencer rifle across his saddle. Eli Red Horse, the man called out, reining up. Wasn't sure we'd see you again. Samuel, got your message from Lou Chang. Eli gestured to Nora. This is Eleanor Galloway. Nora, Samuel Washington. He keeps the peace here, such as it is. Samuel touched his hat brim. Ma'am, heard about the trouble in Red Bluff. Maria's letter said you stood up for Eli against Devereaux's men. Seemed the right thing to do, Nora replied. Right things have a way of causing the most trouble. Samuel's weathered face creased in what might have been a smile. Come on. Anna's got breakfast cooking, and the council's gathering. The settlement up close was even more remarkable. Children of various shades played together in the dusty main street. A Chinese man worked alongside a white woman repairing a wagon wheel. The air carried scents of different cooking bread. Rice, something with chili that made Nora's stomach growl. They stopped at a 2-story building that seemed to serve as meeting hall, with living quarters above. A handsome black woman emerged, wiping flour-dusted hands on her apron. Samuel Washington, you bring guests without warning. But her smile was warm. I'm Anna. You both look like you need feeding. Inside, the hall was already filling. Nora counted maybe 30 adults, Chinese, Norwegian, black, Mexican, Lakota, and various mixes. What struck her wasn't their differences, but how naturally they moved around each other, like a dance long practiced. An elderly Chinese man stood as they entered. Mr. Red Horse, we received the warning. Patrols have seen riders watching from the ridges. This is Grandfather Chen, Eli explained to Nora. He speaks for the Chinese families. And this is Astrid Bjornson. Samuel indicated a stern-faced blonde woman. Speaks for the Norwegian folks. Joseph Tallbear for the Lakota families. And Maria Herrera for the Mexican households. We don't really divide that neat, Astrid said in accented English. But for voting, it helps. Anna had been loading plates with eggs, biscuits, and beans. She set them before Nora and Eli with the firm command, "Eat first, talk after." While they ate, Eli shared what they'd learned: the survey maps, the mineral claims, McKean's warrants. "We knew this was coming," Joseph Tallbear said. He was Eli's age, but carried himself with elder's gravity. "The question is how we respond. We could file our homestead claims in Sheridan." Someone suggested, "Get them registered before Devereaux's mineral claims." "With what money?" Maria Herrera asked. "Filing fees alone would bankrupt half of us, and that's assuming the clerk would even accept our papers." "We could fight," a young man said hotly. "They come here. We die." Grandfather Chen interrupted. "And they use our deaths to justify taking everything. Violent uprising. They will say, 'Army comes.'" "So we just give up?" The young man's frustration echoed around the room. "We adapt," Astrid said. "Always we adapt. Question is how." Nora had been quiet, listening. Now she cleared her throat. "In Kansas, I saw homesteaders fight the railroad with paper instead of bullets. They couldn't match money with money, but they could document everything. Every improvement, every planting, every birth and death. When the railroad tried to claim abandonment, they had proof otherwise." "Paper's only good if someone reads it," Samuel observed. "True, but territorial governor's up for appointment next year. New administration in Washington might mean new ears. If you can hold on until then." "Hold on with what?" Maria asked. "McKean comes with warrants. We resist. We're outlaws. We comply. We're in jail. You hide." Nora said simply, "Not everyone that be suspicious, but those named in the warrants disappear for a while. Others stay, keep working the land, keep documenting." "Where would we hide?" Joseph asked. Eli leaned forward. "The Badlands, winter camps. I know places." "No," Astrid's voice was firm. "We run now. We never stop running. This valley is our home." The debate continued, voices rising and falling like waves. Nora noticed how they argued, passionate but respectful, switching between languages when English failed to capture meaning. She'd never seen anything like it. Finally, Grandfather Chen raised his hand for silence. "We vote. All who think we should temporarily hide those with warrants." Hands went up about half. "All who think we stand and face whatever comes." The other half. "Tied," Samuel said unnecessarily. "What now?" "Now," Anna said from the doorway. "You ask the children." Everyone turned to look at her. "They're the reason we're here," she continued, "building something new for them. Maybe we should know what they think." It was irregular, but Anna Washington had a way of making irregular seem sensible. The children were called in about a dozen, ranging from 6 to 16. The situation was explained in simple terms. A girl about 12, clearly mixed heritage with Chen's eyes and Bjornson's hair, stood. "If some hide and some stay, we're still together, right, just in different places." "Yes," her mother confirmed. "Then that's what we do. Like when the storm comes, some animals burrow, some huddle. Both survive." "Out of the mouths of babes," Samuel murmured. The second vote wasn't tied. That afternoon, Nora found herself assigned to the community kitchen, a long, low building where meals were prepared for work crews and families taking turns in the fields. The woman in charge was Esperanza Flores, Mexican by birth, widow of an Irish soldier. "You cook for many before?" Esperanza asked, showing Nora the stores. "Ranch crew of 20, cattle drive of 30. "Good. Here we feed whoever needs feeding. No one pays, everyone contributes. You understand?" Nora understood. It was like a permanent barn raising. Everyone putting in what they could, taking what they needed. She was kneading bread when a shadow fell across the doorway. A young Lakota woman entered, carrying a baby on her back. "I'm Mary Tallbear," she said,
Joseph's wife. Heard you know healing plants. A little. My father taught me some, and Eli's been showing me prairie medicine. Good. Our healer went to Fort Robinson for supplies. Been gone 2 weeks. Worry creased Mary's face. My daughter's friend has fever. Won't break. Nora dried her hands. Show me. The sick child was in the Norwegian cabin, a boy about 8, flushed and restless. His mother, Ingrid, hovered anxiously. 3 days now. She said, tried willow bark tea, cool cloths. Nora felt the boy's forehead, checked his throat, listened to his breathing. Has he been around the creek playing in standing water? Yes, building dams with the other children. Might be swamp fever. Eli showed me buffalo berry. She described the plant. Make a tea. 1 handful of berries to 2 cups water. Every few hours. I know where it grows, Mary said. I'll fetch some. As they worked together, gathering, brewing, dosing the child, Nora felt something settle in her chest. This was what community meant. Not just living near each other, but living with each other. That evening, she joined Eli on the ridge above the valley. He'd been scouting, watching for McKean's approach. Boy's fever broke, she told him. Ingrid wants to name her next chicken after me. That surprised a laugh from him. High honor. Ingrid's chickens are famous here. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun paint the valley gold and red. Smoke rose from chimneys. Children's voices carried on the wind. And somewhere, a fiddle was tuning up. I understand now, Nora said. Why you'd fight for this. Not fighting for an idea. Eli replied, fighting for people, for grandfather Chen, who lost everything in California but still shares his seeds, for Anna, who escaped slavery but still opens her door, for Astrid, whose husband died in a blizzard but who stayed to raise her children where they'd have friends who looked different. And you, what's your reason? He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. My grandmother used to say the old ways were ending, said we could die with them or help birth something new. This valley. It's not Lakota ways or white ways or any pure thing. It's all of us ways. Maybe that's what comes next. A rider appeared on the opposite ridge, one of their scouts. Riding hard. Eli stood, tension returning to his shoulders. They're coming, he said. Tomorrow, maybe dawn after. That night, the community worked like a hive, those with warrants, Eli. 3 of the Chinese men, 2 Mexican brothers, and 1 of the black families packed essentials. Maps were drawn to winter camps. Children clung to fathers who might be gone for months. Nora helped where she could, but as newcomer, she felt the limitations. These people had spent years building trust. She was still a stranger, no matter how welcome they'd made her. You're brooding, Anna observed, finding her in the kitchen near midnight. I brought trouble here, me and my interference in Red Bluff. Honey, trouble was coming regardless. At least now we got warning. Anna studied her. You planning to run with them? There's no warrant for me. Well, only for questioning. That's not what I asked. Nora met the older woman's knowing gaze. I don't know where I belong. Belonging ain't about where you've been. It's about where you choose to stand. Anna patted her shoulder. Get some sleep. Tomorrow will sort itself. But sleep wouldn't come. Nora walked the quiet streets, past gardens bedded down for winter, past the mix and match buildings that shouldn't exist together but did. At the edge of the settlement, she found Eli preparing his horse. Thought you were leaving at dawn, she said. Best to be in position early. He adjusted a saddle strap, not meeting her eyes. You'll be safe here. Anna and Samuel will look after you. Is that what you think I want, safety? Now he looked at her. What do you want? Nora. The question hung between them like morning mist. What did she want for months? She'd wanted only to survive, to outrun the grief and anger. But now, I want to build something, she said slowly. The way these people have, something that lasts. Even if it means fighting, running, maybe dying. My father died trying to save horses from a fire. Died for property. She gestured at the sleeping valley. This is different. This is people choosing to be family. That's worth any risk. Eli stepped closer. In the moonlight, she could see conflict in his face. If you stay, you're choosing more than just a place. You're choosing a side. Devereaux won't forget. Men like him never do. I know. She thought of the scarred man, of cold eyes calculating profit and loss. I also know what happens when good people don't choose sides. They get burned out one by one, picked off like stragglers from a herd. The others who are running will be hiding in the breaks. Rough country, cold camps, no telling how long. I can handle rough. It's not just that. He seemed to struggle for words. Out there. Away from here. Lines get blurry. What's proper? What's not? People talk. Now she understood. A white woman riding with a Lakota man and others into the wilderness. The scandal that would follow if they were caught. The assumptions that would be made. Eli Redhorse, she said firmly. Are you trying to protect my reputation? Maybe, yes. She laughed, actually laughed. For the first time since Red Bluff. My reputation was gone the moment I interfered in your business. Might as well be hanged for a sheep as a lamb. He smiled then, that rare full smile that changed his whole face. You're sure? I'm sure. Now, are we taking one pack horse or two? They worked together loading supplies, their movements falling into easy rhythm. As dawn approached, others emerged, the men who would hide, their families come to say goodbye. Grandfather Chen pressed a small leather pouch into Eli's hand. Seeds, he said, for spring planting. Wherever you are then. Joseph Tallbear clasped arms with Eli. Watch for our smoke. 3 puffs means safe to return. The Mexican brothers, Juan and Carlos Herrera, checked their rifles one more time. The black family Marcus and Ruth Johnson with their teenage son Daniel made their own farewells. As the eastern sky began to lighten, the small party mounted up, 7 souls heading into the Badlands, leaving behind everything they'd built. We'll keep it safe for you. Samuel promised, however long it takes. They rode out as the first light touched the valley rim. Behind them, Willow Valley woke to a new day, one that would bring lawmen and warrants, threats and lies, but also one that would bring neighbors standing together, children learning that different doesn't mean enemy, and the slow, patient work of building something America had never quite seen before. Nora looked back once, fixing the scene in memory. Then she turned her face toward the wild country ahead, where Eli was already picking out the trail. She'd come west looking for a new start. Instead, she'd found a new fight. And for the first time since the fire took everything, that felt exactly right. Part 4, Fire in the Night and Promises Made. The old storage shed at the edge of Willow Valley hadn't been opened in years. Nora found it while searching for additional blankets to send with the refugees, a weathered structure half hidden by overgrown buffalo berry bushes. The door stuck, swollen with seasons of rain and snow. Need help? Astrid Bjornsson appeared, arms full of preserved food for the riders. Door's stubborn. Nora put her shoulder into it, and with a groan of protest, it gave way. Dust motes danced in the afternoon light, streaming through cracks in the walls. The shed held the usual detritus broken tools, rotted harness leather, empty crates. But in the corner sat a small trunk, its leather straps intact despite the years. Haven't seen that open since we settled here, Astrid mused. Belonged to the family that homesteaded before us. Fever took them all one winter. Nora knelt beside the trunk. Something about it pulled at her, maybe the careful way it had been placed, protected from weather by an overturned crate. The lock had long since rusted away. Inside, she found the expected folded clothes gone to moth and time, a Bible with the names written in fading ink, a few photographs too damaged to make out faces. Then, at the bottom, wrapped in oilcloth, a surveyor's notebook. Her hands trembled as she opened it,
The pages were singed along one edge, but the writing remained clear. Survey marks, property lines, water rights, all for a ranch in Kansas. Her breath caught as she recognized the precise handwriting. Her father's. "What is it?" Astrid asked, noting her shock, but Nora couldn't speak. She was staring at the final entry. Dated just a week before the fire. Offered $500 for water rights by S. Devereaux representative. Refused. Man-made threats. Strange mark on gatepost circle with X through it. Same mark Franklin found before his barn burned. "Nora," Astrid's voice seemed to come from very far away. She looked up, the notebook clutched in shaking hands. "I need to find Eli. Now!" They found the departing group at Skeleton Ridge, making final preparations for the journey into the Badlands. Eli took one look at Nora's face and dismounted. "What's wrong?" She showed him the notebook, watched his expression darken as he read. "This proves it. Devereaux burned out my father, just like he's trying to burn out Willow Valley." "It proves he was in Kansas," Eli said carefully, "and that he wanted your father's land, but in court." "I don't care about court." The words exploded from her. "He killed my father, burned our stock, destroyed everything we'd built, and now he's here, doing it again." Marcus Johnson had ridden over, hearing the raised voices. He read the notebook, his face grim. "Seen this before. Man like Devereaux don't do his own burning. Uses locals, pays them to disappear after." "The scarred man," Nora said suddenly. "In Red Bluff, the one who grabbed me. I'd swear I've seen him before. Maybe in Kansas." "Even if you're right," Ruth Johnson said gently. "What can you do? Man's got judges, lawmen, whole system working for him." Nora looked around the group, people driven from their homes by legal trickery and threats. Good people, honest people, forced to hide like criminals. The rage that had simmered since the fire found new fuel. "We expose him," she said. "Document everything, like I suggested. But more we find others he's burned out. Build a case so big even bought judges can't ignore it." "That's a long game," Marcus observed. "Meanwhile, we're hiding in the breaks come winter." "Then we'd better survive the winter," Nora replied. They were still discussing possibilities when young Daniel Johnson, posted as lookout, whistled sharp. Riders approaching from the east, lots of them. "Too early for McKean," Joseph said, raising his field glasses. "Unless he rode through the night." "It's not McKean," Daniel called down. "It's townsfolk, with torches." The group exchanged glances. Torches meant one thing on the frontier: mob justice. Usually the burning kind. "Back to the valley," Eli ordered. "Now!" They rode hard, the sound of many hoofbeats following. As they crested the final ridge, Nora's heart sank. More riders were coming from the north, and South Willow Valley was being surrounded. "They're boxing us in," Juan Herrera said. "No," Eli studied the movements. "They're driving us, like buffalo to a jump." He pointed to the eastern approach, the only direction without riders. "They want us to run that way." "Into McKean's men, probably," Marcus said. "Knee trap." They thundered into the valley to find chaos. Families were pulling children inside, men reaching for rifles, women filling buckets at the pump. Samuel Washington stood in the center of the street, trying to organize defense. "How many?" he called as they reined up. "Maybe 60, Eli reported, "coming from 3 sides." "We can't fight those numbers," someone said. "Don't have to." Eli dismounted, his mind clearly racing. "They're not here to fight. This is about fear. They want us scattered, panicked." He turned to the gathered people. "Everyone who's supposed to hide, go now. Rest of you, stay visible but calm, no weapons showing. Make them make the first move." "And if that move is fire?" Astrid asked. "Then we fight fire with water, same as always." The mob arrived as the sun touched the western peaks. They didn't enter the valley proper, instead ranging themselves along the ridges, a deliberate display of force. Their leader rode forward just far enough to be heard. Nora recognized him, the scarred man from Red Bluff. Up close, memory clicked into place. She had seen him before, hanging around their Kansas ranch the month before the fire. "Good people of Willow Valley," he called out, his voice carrying the false politeness of a snake oil salesman. "I'm Ben Hartley, duly appointed special deputy. I'm here to serve lawful warrants and ensure the peace." "Since when does keeping peace require 60 armed men?" Samuel called back. "Since certain criminal elements made it necessary." Hartley's smile was all teeth. "Now, I've got warrants for Eli Redhorse, Chen Wu, Chen Dao, Juan and Carlos Herrera, Marcus Johnson, and a few others. They can come peaceful like, or..." He didn't finish the threat. Didn't need to. "The named men aren't here," Samuel said. "Left this morning for parts unknown." "Is that so?" Hartley made a show of looking around. "Well then, we'll just have to search the place. Make sure you're telling the truth." "You have no authority," Astrid began. "Ma'am, I've got all the authority I need." He patted his gun. "Now, we can do this civilized, or we can do it thorough. Your choice." That's when Nora stepped forward. Every instinct screamed against it, but rage overrode caution. "I know you," she said, loud enough for all to hear. "You were in Kansas, Cedar Creek, 2 years ago." Hartley's scarred eyebrow twitched. "You're mistaken, miss." "No mistake. You hung around our ranch for weeks, asking questions about water rights, grazing permits. Then came the fire." She pulled out the surveyor's notebook. "Same mark you left on our gatepost circle with an X, found it on 3 burned properties in Kansas." "Girls talking nonsense," Hartley said, but uncertainty flickered in his eyes. "Am I? How much did Devereaux pay you to burn out the Franklin place? The Hendersons? My father?" Her voice rose with each name. "How much does it cost to murder innocent people?" The mob stirred uneasily. Whatever they'd been told about this raid, accusations of murder weren't part of it. Hartley's hand dropped to his gun. "Watch your tongue, girl, or..." A shot rang out. Not from Hartley, but from the ridge behind him. One of his men had gotten nervous, fired into the air, but in the gathering dusk, with tensions high, that single shot was enough. "Fire!" someone screamed. "They're burning the horse barn." Nora spun to see flames licking at the eastern stable, the one nearest the ridge where the mob waited. Already the fire was spreading. Helped by pine pitch someone had splashed on the walls. The valley erupted. Women ran with buckets. Men rushed to save horses. Children screamed. In the confusion, some of Hartley's men surged forward, whether to help or hinder unclear. Eli appeared at Nora's shoulder. "Thought I told you to run." She said, "Couldn't leave," he replied. Then louder, "Bucket Brigade, form up." Training took over. Frontier people knew fire like an old enemy. Lines formed from pump to barn, buckets passing hand to hand. Nora found herself between Anna Washington and young Daniel Johnson, who'd also refused to flee. The fire fought back, sending up sheets of flame that drove them backward. Horses screamed inside the barn, trapped by fear and smoke. "Someone's got to go in," Samuel shouted. Before anyone could stop her, Nora grabbed a soaked blanket and plunged through the barn door. Smoke hit her like a fist, dropping her to her knees. She crawled forward, guided by the horse's panic, found the first stall latch by touch. The mare inside nearly trampled her in its rush to escape. Nora pressed against the wall, fumbling for the next latch. Her lungs burned, eyes streamed, but she kept going. 3 horses, 4, how many more? Strong hands grabbed her, dragged her backward. She fought until she recognized Eli's voice. "They're all out, move." They stumbled from the barn just as the roof began to collapse. Sparks fountained into the night sky, threatening other buildings. The Bucket Brigade redoubled efforts, led now by some of Hartley's own men who'd abandoned their leader to fight the common enemy. "My baby," Ingrid Bjornson's scream cut through the chaos.
She was playing in the loft.
Without thought, Eli spun toward the burning building. Nora caught his arm. You can't, the roof's going.
Have to try? He shrugged off her grip.
But the barn chose that moment to collapse entirely, sending a wave of heat that drove everyone back. Ingrid's wails rose above the roar of flames. Then, impossibly, a small figure emerged from behind the barn, little Greta Bjornson, soot-covered but unharmed, clutching a barn cat. She'd escaped through the back window before the fire spread. The relief was palpable, but short-lived. The fire had spread to the feed shed, threatening the main storage building. If that went, the community's winter supplies would be gone. Cut a firebreak. Marcus Johnson had returned, rifle in hand. Pull down the chicken coop, make a gap. Men attacked the small structure with axes and rope, creating a barrier of empty ground. Women beat its sparks with wet blankets. Children ran messages, coordinating efforts. And through it all, Nora noticed something Hartley and his core men had withdrawn to the ridge. Watching, waiting. This had been the plan all along: start a fire, create chaos, let the community exhaust itself fighting flames while important evidence burned. The meeting hall, she said suddenly to Eli. All the documents are there: land claims, improvement records, everything. They ran through smoke and confusion to find the hall untouched so far. Inside, Grandfather Chen and Ruth Johnson were already gathering papers, stuffing them into anything that would hold them. Knew they'd come for these, Chen said. Community memory, more dangerous than guns to men like Devereaux. They worked frantically, saving what they could. Maps, certificates, photographs, letters, the paper trail that proved Willow Valley was more than squatters on valuable land. Outside, the battle turned. The firebreak held. The bucket brigade, reinforced now by riders from neighboring homesteads who'd seen the glow, gained ground. By midnight, the last flames were drowning under a flood of prairie determination. Hartley rode down as the smoke cleared, his scarred face ugly with frustration. This doesn't change anything. Warrants are still valid. We'll be back. Yes, Samuel said wearily.
I expect you will.
And next time, Hartley's eyes found Nora.
Maybe we'll have a warrant for you too,
Miss Galloway, or whatever your real name is. Arson's a serious crime. So is murder, she shot back. Ask Devereaux about Kansas. Ask him about the circle with the X. Hartley wheeled his horse sharply, nearly knocking her down. His men followed, some looking ashamed, others defiant. They'd accomplished part of their goal. The horse barn was gone. Supplies damaged, community rattled, but not broken. As the mob's torches disappeared into darkness, Willow Valley took stock. One barn lost, minor injuries. Feed supplies damaged but not destroyed. It could have been much worse. They'll be back, Astrid said, voicing everyone's thought. Let them come, Anna replied. We survived this, we'll survive the next. Cleanup continued through the night. Nora found herself in the makeshift medical station, treating burns and smoke inhalation with Mary Tallbear. Her own hands were blistered from bucket handles and hot metal latches, but she ignored the pain. Eli appeared as dawn broke gray and smoky. A bandage wrapped his left shoulder where burning debris had caught him. You should have run when I told you, Nora said, spreading salve on his burn. You should have stayed out of that barn. He countered. Guess we're both bad at following orders. Guess we are. His hand covered hers, stilling her ministrations. That was brave. What you said to Hartley, also dangerous. You've marked yourself now. I was marked the day they burned my father's ranch. Just took me this long to realize it. She met his eyes. I meant what I said before. I want to build something here, something worth defending. Even after tonight, knowing it'll get worse before it gets better. Especially after tonight. She gestured at the scene outside, people of all colors working together to rebuild what fire had taken.
My father used to say home wasn't a place but a choice. These people chose to stand together. I want to be part of that choice." Eli was quiet for a long moment. Then, "There's something I should tell you about the winter camps. They're rough, cold, dangerous, and I'll be responsible for everyone's safety. Can't afford distractions." "Am I a distraction, Ally, Red Horse?" His thumb traced the edge of a blister on her palm, gentle as breath. "You know you are." The admission hung between them, fragile as smoke. Outside, hammers were already ringing as the community began rebuilding. Inside, two people who'd been running from grief, from connection, from the possibility of loss finally stood still. "Then I'll try not to distract you," Nora said softly. "Until the winter's over, until it's safe. After that, he agreed. They returned to the work of healing and rebuilding. But something had shifted. In the ashes of attempted destruction, a different kind of spark had been acknowledged, not yet a flame that would come later, when survival wasn't the only concern, but a promise, nonetheless. By full daylight, the riders who'd fled to the Badlands had circled back, drawn by the smoke. They brought news McKean was indeed coming, but slowly, his men nervous about entering the breaks. "Gives us time," Marcus said. "Maybe enough to make this legal-like." "How?" someone asked. It was Nora who answered, the surveyor's notebook still clutched in her smoke-stained hands. "We write it all down. Everything. Turn their own weapons against them paperwork. Witnesses, law. But our law, our truth. Takes money for lawyers," Samuel pointed out. "Then we find money, sell cattle, horses, whatever it takes." She looked around the circle of soot-covered faces. "They want to burn us out one by one. Fine, but we make sure everyone knows who lit the match." Agreement rippled through the group. They'd fought fire with water. Now they'd fight lies with truth. As plans took shape, Eli touched Nora's elbow. "Walk with me." They climbed to the ridge where the mob had gathered hours before. The valley spread below them, scarred but unbroken. Smoke still rose from the barn's remains, but already children were playing in the streets again. "My grandmother had a saying," Eli said. "The fire that burns the prairie makes the grass grow stronger." Never understood it as a boy. "And now?" Now I think she meant sometimes destruction clears the way for something new, something that couldn't grow in the old shade. He faced her fully. "I'm glad you stayed. Nora, glad you're choosing to stand with us." "With you," she corrected. "All of you, yes, but with you." "Eli?" He smiled that rare, transformative expression. "Then we'd better make sure there's something left to stand for." Below them, Willow Valley began another day, damaged but determined. Its people would face whatever came next. And on the ridge, two people who'd found each other in flight finally turned to face the fight together. The winter camps waited. McKean and his warrants waited. Devereaux and his machinations waited. But first, there was a barn to rebuild. And in that simple act of construction lay all the defiance and hope the valley would need for the trials ahead. Part 5, take your time. The first winter storm struck the Badlands with the fury of a spurned lover. For 3 days, snow fell in horizontal sheets, driven by winds that could freeze a man's breath in his lungs. The small band of refugees huddled in a natural cave system Eli had found, deep in the maze of coulees and breaks that made this country nearly impassable. Nora woke on the 4th morning to silence the storm had finally passed. Pale light filtered through the cave entrance, revealing their makeshift camp 7 souls crowded into a space meant for half that number, surrounded by what supplies they'd managed to pack. "Coffee's ready," Ruth Johnson said softly, not wanting to wake the others. "Such as it is." The brew was weak, stretched with roasted chicory root, but it was hot. Nora wrapped her hands around the tin cup, grateful for any warmth. Her feet had been numb for 2 days despite the wool socks Anna Washington had insisted she take. "How's Marcus?" she asked. Ruth's face tightened. "Fever broke in the night. Praise God. But that cough—" She shook her head. "Man's too stubborn to admit he's sick." They'd all paid a price for this exile. Juan Herrera nursed a wrenched knee from a fall on iced rocks. Young Daniel Johnson had lost weight he couldn't spare, giving his rations to others. And Eli. Nora looked to where he slept, or pretended to sleep. He'd been out in the worst of the storm, hunting when their supplies ran low, scouting for McKean's men, finding better shelter. The responsibility of keeping them all alive was wearing him down like water on stone. As if sensing her gaze, he opened his eyes. For a moment, unguarded. She saw the exhaustion there. Then his usual composure returned. "We need to move today," he said quietly. "This cave's played out for firewood, and the smoke's too visible now the storm's passed." Where? Carlos Herrera had awakened, his young face gaunt with cold and worry. "There's an old trapper's cabin, maybe 10 miles south, abandoned, but the walls still stand. Better than this." They broke camp with the efficiency of people who'd learned to move fast and light. Everything had multiple uses. Blankets became packs. Cooking pots held ammunition. Even the coffee grounds would be dried and reused. The journey that should have taken 3 hours took 6. Fresh snow hid danger's holes, loose rocks, ice sheets that could send horse and rider tumbling. They moved in single file, Eli breaking trail, the others following in his tracks. The cabin, when they finally reached it, was a disappointment. Half the roof had collapsed, leaving only one corner truly sheltered, but it had a fireplace and walls to break the wind, and that was luxury enough. "Home sweet home," Daniel said with forced cheer. They spent the rest of the day making it livable, patching the worst gaps with pine boughs and mud, gathering firewood, melting snow for water. By nightfall, they'd created something almost cozy. The fireplace drew properly. They'd hung blankets to create separate spaces, and Marcus was breathing easier in the warmer air. That's when Chen Dao, who'd been silent most of the journey, finally spoke. "I should go back." Everyone turned to look at the younger Chen brother. "They want me, not my grandfather, not the rest of you. If I turn myself in, they'll hang you." Juan interrupted. "Make an example. You know this." "Maybe, but maybe they'll be satisfied with one. Let the rest go." "No." Grandfather Chen's voice was firm. "We stay together or we fall apart. This is not about one person. It's about what we represent, people who won't bow to men like Devereaux." "Fine words," Dao said bitterly. "But my wife is pregnant, due in 2 months. What if I'm still hiding when—" His voice broke. They all knew what he wasn't saying. Winter births were dangerous enough in warm houses with midwives attending out here, or with him absent when his wife's time came. "We'll find a way," Nora said. "Legal channels, like we discussed. It just takes time." "Time," Dao laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Time's the one thing we don't have." The conversation died there, but the tension remained. They were all thinking of those left-behind spouses, children, friends facing Devereaux's pressure without them. Nora couldn't sleep that night. The fire had burned low, casting shifting shadows on the cabin walls. She rose quietly, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders, and slipped outside. The storm had left the world transformed. Snow blanketed everything, smoothing rough edges, making even this harsh landscape beautiful. Stars blazed overhead with the intensity that only came with bitter cold. "Can't sleep either." Eli stood near the cabin corner, barely visible in the darkness. He'd cleared a spot on a fallen log, and Nora joined him there. "I keep thinking about Dao's wife," she said. "About all of them back there. We're hiding out here while they face whatever Devereaux throws at them. Guilt's a luxury we can't afford." "It's not guilt. It's—" She searched for words. "It's feeling useless. In the valley, I could cook, tend wounds, help rebuild. Here, I'm just another mouth to feed. You saved Tommy Sullivan's life, stood up to Hartley, pulled horses from a burning barn. His voice was quiet but firm. That's not useless. That was different. That was action. This is just waiting. Sometimes waiting is the hardest action there is. They sat in companionable silence, sharing warmth where their shoulders touched. The night was so still she could hear snow settling, adjusting to its own weight. "Tell me about after," she said suddenly. "After winter, after the warrants are dealt with. What then?" "You planning on staying?" "I told you I was." "Plans change. People leave." There was old hurt in his voice. "This country has a way of breaking promises." Nora turned to face him fully. In the starlight, she could just make out his features. "I'm not leaving, Eli, not the valley, and not—" Not what? The moment stretched between them, fragile as frost. They'd been dancing around this for weeks, the attraction that pulled them together even as circumstances kept them apart. Out here, with survival the only law, such consideration seemed both vital and irrelevant. "Not you," she finished softly. "If you'll have me." His hand found hers under the blanket. "Nora, I know all the reasons why it's complicated. Different worlds, different ways. I know what people will say, what they'll think. I don't care." "You should care. It matters in towns, in courts, in—" She silenced him with a finger to his lips. "Does it matter here now to you?" He caught her hand, held it against his chest where she could feel his heartbeat, rapid despite his calm exterior. "No, here, now, to me, no." They moved together slowly, inevitably, like rivers finding the sea. The kiss was gentle at first, almost hesitant, as if they were both afraid of breaking something precious, then deeper, hungrier, months of denied wanting pouring out. When they finally parted, both breathing unsteadily, Nora laughed shakily. "So much for not being a distraction." "Worth it," he said, and kissed her again. They might have stayed there, lost in each other, but the crack of a branch made them both freeze. Eli was on his feet instantly, hand on his knife. "Just me." Marcus Johnson emerged from the shadows, rifle in hand. "Heard something, thought I'd check." His eyes took in their close position, but his expression didn't change. "Everything all right?" "Fine," Eli said. "Just couldn't sleep." "Mm-hmm." Marcus's tone was dry. "Well, might want to get that sleeping done inside. Temperature's dropping fast." He headed back to the cabin, leaving them alone again. But the moment was broken. The real world intruding. "He's right," Eli said. "You should go in. Frostbite's no joke." "What about you?" "Need to check the horses. Make sure they're sheltered enough." She knew it was an excuse, knew he needed time to think. She rose, but caught his hand before leaving. "Eli, this isn't just— I'm not—" "I know," he squeezed her fingers. "We'll talk. When there's time. When it's safe. But when would it ever be truly safe? When would there be time for anything beyond survival?" The next days blurred together. They moved camps twice more, always staying ahead of any pursuit. Food ran low. Marcus's cough worsened. Chendao grew more withdrawn, carving endless wooden animals for the child he might never see. Then, a week before Christmas, Joseph Tallbear found them. He appeared like a ghost from the snow, nearly getting shot by a jumpy Juan before identifying himself. His news was mixed. McKean gave up the chase, too dangerous in this weather, and half his deputies refused to go into the breaks anyway. He accepted the cup of thin soup Nora offered gratefully. But Devereaux's not done. He's filed injunctions, claiming the valley's abandoned. And there's worse. "How much worse?" Marcus asked. "Mary lost the baby." Joseph's voice was steady, but his eyes showed grief. "Too early, Too hard without proper help. The silence was deafening. Another loss to add to the tally, another price paid for standing up to power. I should have been there, Nora said quietly. Wouldn't have changed anything. These things happen. Joseph stared into his soup. But it made me think. How many more will we lose? How long do we hide while our lives fall apart? What are you saying? Eli asked. I'm saying maybe it's time to stop running, stop hiding, go back and face whatever comes. That's suicide, Juan protested. They'll arrest us the moment. Will they? Joseph looked around the group. McKean's lost face, sending men into a blizzard for nothing. Devereaux's injunctions won't hold if we're there to contest them. And the territorial governor's sending investigators about the fire. Seems someone, he nodded to Nora, sent a very detailed letter about patterns of arson across multiple territories. When? Nora breathed. Week after the fire. Anna helped write it. Sent copies to newspapers, too. Governor can't ignore it. Not with elections coming. Hope, that dangerous emotion, stirred in the cabin. It's still a risk, Marcus said, ever cautious. Everything's a risk. Joseph replied, but at least in the valley. We risk together. Out here. He gestured at their mean surroundings. Out here we just slowly starve. They voted, as was their way. It wasn't unanimous. Carlos feared for his brother, Dow for his wife. But in the end, the decision was made. They would return for Christmas, together, and face whatever waited. That last night in the cabin, Nora found herself unable to sleep again. But this time, when she stepped outside, Eli was waiting. Figured you'd be out here, he said. Figured you'd figure that. They walked away from the cabin, finding shelter in a grove of pines. The snow had stopped, and the moon painted everything in silver and shadow. Are you ready for tomorrow? She asked. Are any of us? He pulled her close, and she rested her head against his shoulder. I keep thinking about what you said, about after, and I think I want there to be an after, a real one, not just surviving, but living, building something. He tilted her chin up. With you, even knowing how hard it'll be, especially knowing that easy things don't last. But this, he gestured between them, this feels like it could last. They made love there in the snow-hushed forest, on a bed of pine needles and blankets, with stars as witness. It was gentle and fierce by turns, a claiming and a promise, a shelter against all the storms to come. Afterward, wrapped in blankets and each other, Nora traced patterns on his chest. No regrets. None. You. None. She smiled against his skin. Though we should probably head back before we freeze. Probably. But neither moved. Eli. Whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know, this winter, these weeks with you, they've meant everything. He was quiet so long she thought he'd fallen asleep. Then, you saved me, Nora, not from bullets or fire, from becoming nothing but anger and duty, from forgetting there was anything worth fighting for besides survival. They dressed reluctantly, stealing kisses between layers of clothing, laughing softly at their own foolishness. The walk back to the cabin was bitter cold, but neither felt it, warmed from within by something that had nothing to do with physical heat. At the door, Eli caught her hand. After tomorrow, things change. We'll be back in the world, with all its rules and divisions. I know. It won't be easy. People will talk. Some won't understand. I know that too. But you still... Still. Always. She squeezed his hand. We've survived Devereaux, McKean, winter storms, and bad coffee. I think we can handle a few disapproving looks. His laugh was soft but real. When you put it that way... They slipped inside to find everyone awake, pretending not to have noticed their absence. Ruth Johnson just smiled and handed them hot coffee.
Marcus nodded approval. Even Dao seemed less burdened, as if their happiness reminded him what they were all fighting for. Tomorrow they would ride back to Willow Valley. Tomorrow they would face warrants and injunctions, prejudice and power. Tomorrow the real battle would begin. But tonight, in a half-ruined cabin in the Badlands, 7 people who'd become family shared warmth and hope, and 2 people who'd found each other against all odds held tight to the promise of after. The fire burned low, casting golden light on weathered faces. Outside, wolves howled in the distance, but the sound no longer seemed threatening. It was just another voice in the wilderness, calling to its mate, declaring its presence, claiming its place in the world, just as they would claim theirs come morning. Ash Part 6, The Road to the County Seat. Christmas morning in Willow Valley dawned clear and cold. The refugees had returned 3 days earlier to a hero's welcome tempered by the reality of their situation. McKean might have given up the chase, but the legal machinery ground on. Devereaux's injunctions still threatened everything they'd built. "We need someone at the county seat who understands law," Samuel Washington said at the emergency council meeting. "These papers," he gestured at the stack of legal documents, "might as well be written in Chinese for all I can make of them. They are designed to confuse," Grandfather Chen observed. "Make simple things complex, so common people need expensive lawyers." "Which we can't afford," Astrid added. Nora had been studying the papers for hours, using what she'd learned from her father's dealings with land lawyers. The injunctions claim abandonment because key landholders fled, but if we can prove continuous occupation and improvement, that claim falls apart. "How do we prove it?" Maria Herrera asked. "Documentation, witness statements, and most importantly, physical presence at the courthouse when they hear the case." Nora looked around the room. "We need to send a delegation to Sheridan, file our own papers before Devereaux's claims get rubber stamped." "It's a 3-day ride in good weather," Samuel said. "Longer now with snow, and McKean's still got those warrants." "Then we send people who aren't named in the warrants," Eli suggested. "Nora, Grandfather Chen, Astrid, maybe 1 or 2 others. Respectable citizens filing legitimate claims." "I should go," Marcus said, then coughed harshly. The winter in hiding had worsened his condition. "Show them we're not all outlaws." "You're in no shape to ride," Ruth said firmly. "Bad enough I nearly lost you to that fever." "I'll go," offered Lu Chang, who'd returned to the valley after warning them about McKean. "I know the clerks in Sheridan. Did laundry for them before coming here?" "That's good," Nora said, planning rapidly. "Lu, myself. Grandfather Chen for the Chinese families. Astrid for the Norwegians. 4 different groups represented. All legal residents." "You'll need protection," Eli said. "The road to Sheridan goes through Devereaux's territory." "You can't go," Joseph pointed out. "The warrant—" "I wasn't thinking of me. Daniel's young, but he's steady. And there's Tom Brennan from the Irish homesteads. Good with a rifle. No warrants on him." Plans crystallized quickly. They would leave in 2 days, giving time to gather all necessary documents and witness statements. Anna and Maria would prepare written testimonies from those who couldn't travel. Every improvement would be catalogued. Every birth and death recorded. "It's not enough," Dao said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at him. "Papers, words, proper channels. You think Devereaux got rich playing by rules he'll have the judge bought before you arrive?" "Maybe," Nora admitted. "But what choice do we have hide forever? Let him win by default." "Fight back his way, burn his property like he burned ours." "And become him." Grandfather Chen's voice was sharp. "Lose our souls to keep our land." "Better than losing both," Dao muttered, but subsided. 2 nights later, their small party prepared to depart. The pack horses were loaded with documents, food for the journey, and what little money the community had scraped together for filing fees. Nora checked her father's derringer, now cleaned and loaded, tucked in her coat pocket.
Expecting trouble? Eli asked, catching the gesture, hoping to avoid it, but yes, expecting it. He pulled her aside, out of earshot of the others. There's another route, longer but safer, through Crow territory. I have connections there. How much longer? 2 extra days, but no chance of meeting Devereaux's men. We can't afford extra days. The hearing's set for December 30th. I know. He touched her face gently. Just be careful. These aren't mob riders looking to scare farmers. If Devereaux thinks you can really challenge his claims, he'll send professionals. She covered his hand with hers. I'll be careful. We all will. That's not enough for me anymore? The admission seemed pulled from him. Losing you now, after... You won't lose me? She kissed him quickly, aware of watching eyes. I'll file these papers, save the valley, and be back before New Year's. Then we can scandalize everyone properly by courting in public. That surprised a laugh from him. Is that what we're doing, courting? Would you prefer a different word? No, courting's good, old-fashioned, respectable. His eyes gleamed. Nothing at all like what we did in that pine grove. She blushed, grateful for the darkness. Behave yourself, Eli Redhorse. Yes, ma'am, though you didn't seem to want me behaving that night. The others are waiting, she said hastily, though she was smiling. They rejoined the group to find Daniel Johnson checking weapons with Tom Brennan, a taciturn man who'd lost his own homestead to railroad schemes. Ready? Tom asked. As will ever be, Astrid said, at nearly 60. She was the oldest of their party, but she sat her horse like someone half her age. They rode out under a crescent moon, breath steaming in the frigid air. Behind them, the valley settled into watchful waiting. Ahead lay 3 days of dangerous travel and an uncertain welcome. The first day passed without incident. They made good time on the packed snow of the main trail, stopping only to rest the horses and eat cold meals. That night they sheltered in an abandoned stage station, taking turns on watch. Why do you stay? Lou asked Nora during her watch. This is not your fight, not your people. Aren't they? She gestured at their sleeping companions. I've eaten at their tables, helped birth their children, fought fire alongside them. If that doesn't make them my people. What does... Blood, heritage, the things that mark us before we're born. Maybe, or maybe people become family by choosing to be. She smiled. My father used to say family was just folks who'd stick by you when leaving would be easier. Your father sounds wise. He was, and Devereaux killed him for it. The smile faded. That's another reason I stay. Someone needs to remember the fires he's set. The second day brought trouble. They were crossing Merchant's Bridge over the frozen Powder River when riders appeared on the far bank. 4 men, well armed, blocking the route. Morning, folks. The leader called. He was young, maybe 25, with the easy confidence of someone who'd never lost a fight. Toll Bridge today. Since when? Astrid demanded. This is a public road. Since Mr. Devereaux decided it needed maintenance. $1 a head, 2 for horses. That's robbery, Tom Brennan said flatly. That's business. Pay up or turn back. Nora did quick calculations. They had barely enough money for filing fees. This toll would clean them out. We're on legal business, she said. Heading to the courthouse. Interfering with that is... Is what? The young man grinned. You going to arrest us? Miss with what authority? The standoff stretched taut. Daniel's hand drifted toward his rifle, but Tom caught his wrist, shaking his head minutely. Then Liu Chang did something unexpected. He dismounted and approached the bridge tender's shack, speaking quietly in Chinese. The old Chinese man who emerged looked startled, then began arguing with the toll collectors. What's he saying? The leader demanded. He says bridge is built on old mining claim.
Liu translated calmly. Claim belonging to Chen family. You want toll pay rent first. That's bull. Is it? Grandfather Chen produced a yellowed document. Mining claim 443 filed 1869. Never abandoned, never sold. Your Mr. Devereaux built his bridge on our land. It was a bluff. Mostly. The claim was real, but its boundaries vague. Still, it created enough uncertainty to make the toll collectors nervous. We could shoot you all, the leader suggested, but his heart wasn't in it. Could, Tom agreed. Course. Then you'd have to explain to Devereaux why you murdered the folks bringing legal papers the territorial governor's expecting to see. Man's already under investigation for arson. Don't think he'd appreciate more attention. Governor's expecting you. Why else would we risk this road? Nora let certainty ring in her voice. These documents were specifically requested by the Territorial Investigation Committee. Another lie, but a plausible one. The young man looked uncertain now. Let them pass, Cody. One of his companions said, not worth the trouble. Fine, but we'll be checking this story. It better hold up. They crossed the bridge in tense silence. Only when they were well clear did anyone speak. That was brilliant, Daniel breathed. That was lucky, Lou corrected. Won't work twice. The third obstacle came that night. They'd made camp in a grove of cottonwoods when Tom, on watch, whistled warning. Riders approaching, moving too quietly to be innocent travelers. How many? Nora whispered. 6, maybe 7, circling to surround us. The fire. Already doused it, but they know we're here. They waited, weapons ready. As footsteps crunched through snow, then a familiar voice called out, Miss Galloway, no need for unpleasantness. We just want to talk. Ben Hartley, the scarred man from Red Bluff, Devereaux's enforcer, the one who'd burned her father's ranch. Nothing to talk about, she called back. Oh, I think there is. See, Mr. Devereaux's a reasonable man. He doesn't want trouble any more than you do. So he sent me with an offer. We're listening, Astrid said, ever practical. Hartley emerged from the shadows, hands visible but weapons close. Simple deal. You folks turn around, go home, forget about this courthouse nonsense. In exchange, Mr. Devereaux drops the injunctions, lets you stay in Willow Valley. As his tenants, Nora guessed. As protected residents, small rent, nothing unreasonable. Hell of a lot better than being homeless come spring. And if we refuse, Hartley's scarred face was impassive. Then you don't make it to Sheridan. Tragic accident. Wolves, maybe, or road agents. These hills are dangerous in winter. You're threatening to murder us. Lou's voice was steady. I'm explaining reality. Your choice what to do with the information. Nora stood slowly, her hand near but not on her weapon. I have a counteroffer. Do you now? You leave. We continue to Sheridan. And I don't tell the governor's investigators that you personally burned 3 ranches in Kansas, including my father's. You can't prove that. Can't I? She pulled out the surveyor's notebook, safe in oilcloth. Your mark's on here, same one found at the Valley Fire, same one at the Franklin place, the Henderson Ranch. How many more? Hartley. How many families burned out so men like Devereaux could buy cheap? Even in moonlight, she could see his face change. Where did you get that? Does it matter? Point is, I have it, and copies are already on their way to the territorial capital. Another lie, but he couldn't know that. Give me the notebook, he said softly. I'll make it worth your while. More money than you've ever seen. Blood money. No thanks. Then you're a fool. He stepped back into the shadows. Last chance. Miss Galloway. Turn back now. No. Your funeral. He melted into the darkness. They heard horses moving away, but no one relaxed. They'll hit us tomorrow, Tom said. Probably at Breakneck Canyon. Only one way through. Perfect for an ambush. Then we go around, Daniel suggested. Ads a day, we'd miss the hearing. Better than missing our lives, Lou observed. But Nora was thinking, what if we don't go through or around? What if we go over? Over Breakneck. Astrid shook her head. In winter, that's madness. Maybe, but it's also the last thing they'd expect. They debated through the night. In the end, desperation won. At first light, they left the main trail, following game paths up the canyon's steep sides. It was treacherous going horses sliding, packs threatening to overbalance, everyone dismounting to lead their animals. Halfway up, they could see riders in the canyon below, positioned for ambush, Hartley's men, waiting for prey that would never come. Quietly now, Tom whispered, "Sound carries in these rocks." They crept past like ghosts, every hoofstep muffled, every breath held. Once, a horse kicked loose stones that clattered down. They froze, watching the men below. But the ambushers were focused on the trail, not the heights. It took 6 hours to cross what should have been a 2-hour ride. They descended the far side scraped, exhausted, but alive. "We did it," Daniel breathed. "Not yet," Nora said. "Sheridan's still 10 miles, and Hartley won't give up easy." They pushed hard, knowing pursuit would come once the ambush failed. The horses were lathered and blowing, but they couldn't afford to rest. Sheridan appeared like a mirage, buildings rising from the white plain, smoke promising warmth and civilization. They rode down Main Street as the courthouse clock struck 4. 1 hour before closing, Astrid said, "We made it." But the courthouse steps were blocked, not by gunmen this time, but by a well-dressed man with legal papers. "Injunction," he said, handing them over. "No filing of claims while investigation pending. Judge Thorne's orders." "Let me guess," Nora said tiredly. "Judge Thorne's a friend of Mr. Devereaux." The lawyer's smile was thin. "Judge Thorne is a servant of the law, nothing more." "Then he won't mind reviewing our documents personally," Grandfather Chen said, moving forward with dignity despite trail dirt and exhaustion. "These are matters of life and death for 60 families. Surely the judge can spare a moment." "The judge is busy." "The judge is right here." A new voice from the courthouse door. An elderly man in black robes stood there, his face unreadable. "I heard there was a commotion. What's this about life and death?" It was their chance. Nora stepped forward, pulling out the carefully preserved documents. "Your Honor, we represent the families of Willow Valley. We've risked everything to bring evidence of a massive land fraud. If you'll just look, bring it to my chambers. All of you." He glared at the lawyer. "You too, Prescott. Let's see what's so important it brings people through a blizzard to my door." They followed him inside, hardly daring to hope. In the wood-paneled chamber, they laid out their case: the false mineral claims, the fires, the pattern of intimidation. Judge Thorne listened without expression. When they finished, he was silent for a long moment. "These are serious allegations," he finally said. "They'll need investigation, full hearings. That takes time." Nora's heart sank. More delays meant more opportunities for Devereaux to maneuver. "However," the judge continued, "I can issue a temporary restraining order. No evictions, no new claims filed on Willow Valley land until the matter's resolved." "Your Honor," Prescott protested, "Mr. Devereaux has investments." "Mr. Devereaux can wait like everyone else." The judge's voice was firm. "Justice delayed is justice denied. But justice rushed is no justice at all." He signed papers with swift strokes. "There! Willow Valley is protected for 90 days. Use that time wisely." Outside the courthouse, they stood stunned. They'd won. Not the war, but this crucial battle. "We need to get word back," Astrid said. "They'll be worried." "And Hartley's still out there," Tom added. "He won't be happy." But Nora was smiling, tears freezing on her cheeks.
We did it. We actually did it.
This time, Lou said quietly.
But Devereaux won't stop. Men like him never do.
Then neither will we. She looked at her companions, Norwegian, Chinese, Irish, young and old, bound by shared purpose. We'll fight every injunction, challenge every claim, document every crime, until justice is more than just a word. They found lodging for the night, sending a telegram to Willow Valley with the good news. Tomorrow would bring the dangerous journey home, but tonight they'd won a victory for all the small folks against the powerful. In her narrow hotel bed, Nora clutched the restraining order and thought of Eli. 3 months to build their case, 3 months to find more evidence, 3 months to create a life together worth defending. It wasn't everything, but it was enough. For now.
Part 7. Hailstorm at Cottonwood Pass.
The restraining order had bought them time. But time was a currency Devereaux knew how to manipulate. By late February, his response came in a form none had expected: environmental warfare. Eli spotted the wagon tracks first, deep ruts cutting through fresh snow toward the headwaters of Willow Creek. He'd been hunting elk when the unusual pattern caught his eye. No one had business that far up the valley in winter, especially with wagons that heavy. Industrial equipment, Marcus said when Eli reported back.
Has to be, but for what?
They found out 3 days later when dead fish began floating downstream. The water itself had turned a sickly yellow-green, with an acrid smell that burned the nostrils. Mining acid. Liu Chang identified, his face grim. Saw this in California. They're poisoning the water source. But why? Anna asked. The restraining order. Doesn't matter if we can't live here, Samuel finished. No water means no crops come spring, no livestock. He's trying to force us out without technically violating the judge's order. The emergency meeting that night was tense. Some wanted to ride immediately, confront whoever was poisoning their lifeline. Others counseled caution. Devereaux was surely expecting retaliation.
We need evidence,
Nora argued.
Proof of who's doing this and on whose orders. Otherwise, it's our word against his.
Evidence won't bring back our water, Dow said bitterly. His wife had delivered their son during the winter, a healthy boy they'd named Henry. Now that child might have no future here. No, but it might put Devereaux behind bars where he can't hurt anyone else. They formed 2 groups. One would work on temporary water solutions, melting snow, hauling from distant springs. The other would track the poisoners, gather evidence, and if possible, stop them. Eli led the tracking party himself. Tom Brennan, Joseph Tallbear, Juan Herrera, and despite protests, Nora. You're not named in the warrants anymore, he argued. That restraining order cleared you for now. All the more reason I should go. I can be the legal witness if needed. They followed the wagon tracks up the narrowing valley, through stands of pine and aspen, into the realm where winter ruled absolute. The second night out, they found the camp 6 men, industrial equipment, and barrels marked with skull and crossbones.
Copper sulfate,
Tom whispered, reading the labels through his field glasses.
Enough to poison every stream from here to the Powder River. They're not even trying to hide.
Joseph observed. That's arrogance or
bait,
Eli finished.
They want us to attack.
Give Devereaux an excuse to call in federal marshals. But Nora was studying the men. That one, 3rd from left, I've seen him before. She borrowed the field glasses, focusing.
My God, that's Calvin Morse. He testified at the Sheridan hearing, said he was a neutral surveyor.
Not so neutral, Juan said darkly. This changes things. A court officer participating in poisoning water supplies? Nora pulled out her journal, beginning to sketch and document. That's conspiracy, federal crime. They watched for 2 days, documenting everything. Times, amounts of chemicals dumped, conversations overheard. Nora filled pages with meticulous notes while the men took turns watching and hunting for food. On the 3rd dawn, everything changed. Riders coming, Joseph reported. Lot of them.
Through the glasses, they could see Ben Hartley leading a dozen armed men up the trail. The poisoning crew greeted them with obvious relief.
About time, Morse complained. We're almost out of supplies. Load up, Hartley ordered. Weather's turning, storm coming in from the north.
Eli studied the sky. Hartley was right. The light had that peculiar quality that preceded the worst spring storms.
We need to move too. Get back to the valley before.
Thunder crashed overhead, though no lightning had preceded it. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in minutes.
Now,
Eli commanded.
Move now!
They broke camp hastily, but the storm struck before they'd gone a mile. Not rain, but hail chunks of ice ranging from pea-sized to fist-sized, driven by hurricane winds. The horses screamed, bucking against the painful barrage.
The trees!
Tom shouted, pointing to a grove of cottonwoods. They fought their way to minimal shelter, but the hail continued, relentless. Through the white curtain of ice, they could see Hartley's group also struggling for cover. The poisoning equipment was abandoned as men fled nature's fury. Then Nora saw opportunity in the chaos.
The barrels, if we can dump them now, in the storm.
That's insane, Juan protested.
We'll be killed.
We're dead anyway if that poison stays. She was already moving, using her horse as a shield against the worst of the hail. Eli cursed and followed. One by one, the others joined them. What followed was a battle against nature and man simultaneously. They reached the barrels just as Hartley's men realized what was happening. Gunfire cracked through the storm, but the hail made accurate shooting impossible.
Turn them over,
Eli shouted.
Into the snow, not the water.
They heaved against the heavy barrels. Tom grunted as hail struck his shoulder, spinning him around. Juan's horse went down, legs thrashing. But barrel by barrel, they dumped the poison onto ground rather than into the stream.
Stop them!
Hartley's voice carried over the storm. The scarred man himself appeared through the hail. Revolver raised. His shot went wide as ice struck his hand. But his intention was clear. Kill first. Explain later. Eli stepped between Hartley and Nora, his own weapon drawn.
Enough, you've lost.
Not while I'm breathing. They faced each other in the heart of the storm. Two men shaped by different views of justice. Around them, the battle continued, men wrestling for barrels. Horses screaming, hail pounding everything flat. Then the largest hailstone, yet big as a child's head, struck the rock face above them. The impact triggered a slide of ice and stone that separated the two groups. Hartley's men were driven back, while Eli's group found themselves in a protected hollow.
Joseph's hit!
Tom's voice cut through the chaos. The older man was down, blood seeping from a gash where stone or ice had struck. Nora crawled to him, her medical supplies already out. Not deep, Joseph managed, but can't ride.
We'll carry you, Juan said.
No, too slow. Leave me.
Like hell, Eli said flatly.
The storm raged for another hour. When it finally began to ease, the landscape had transformed. Hail lay feet deep in places. The poisoning equipment was buried or smashed, and both groups were battered beyond fighting.
This isn't over, Hartley called across the impromptu barrier.
Yes, it is, Nora called back. I have names, dates, amounts. Calvin Morse participating in federal crimes. Your men discussing orders from Devereaux. It's all documented, witnessed, and will be in the judge's hands within the week. Hartley's face was murderous, but he knew when he was beaten.
Mount up, he ordered his men. We're leaving.
What about the equipment? Morse protested. Leave it. It's evidence now. Hartley's smile was bitter. Congratulations, Miss Galloway. You've won this round, but Devereaux has deep pockets and a long memory. So do I, she replied steadily. They watched the defeated poisoners retreat down the valley. Only when they were gone did Eli's group assess their own damage. Joseph's wound was painful but not dangerous.
Tom had a separated shoulder. Juan's horse had a badly bruised leg but would recover. And the water, when they tested the stream an hour later, it ran clear. The storm had washed away what poison had already been dumped, and the rest lay harmless under tons of hail.
"We did it," Tom said wonderingly.
"We actually stopped them."
"This time," Eli said. "But Hartley's right. This isn't over." They built a travois for Joseph and began the slow journey home. The storm had passed but left a transformed world, trees stripped bare, new channels carved by the violent runoff. The very shape of the land altered. "Look," Juan pointed ahead. A group of riders approached from the valley, the rest of the able-bodied men coming to find them. "We saw the storm," Samuel explained. "Feared the worst." The worst came, Joseph said from his travois. "But we endured." The reunion in Willow Valley that night was subdued but hopeful. They'd saved their water, gathered crucial evidence, and survived nature's worst. But the cost was evident injuries that would slow spring work, horses that might never fully recover, and the knowledge that Devereaux would strike again. "I'll take the evidence to Sheridan myself," Nora announced. "With Tom and Lou as witnesses, Judge Thorne needs to know what happened here." "Too dangerous," Eli protested. "Hartley knows you have the documents. He'll be watching the roads." "Then I'll go through Crow territory. Take your safe route this time." They argued, but her mind was made up. 3 days later, she set out with Tom and Lou, plus 2 Crow guides Eli had arranged. The evidence was split among them even if Hartley caught one. The others might get through. The journey took 5 days through spectacular but difficult country. They saw no sign of pursuit, though all remained watchful. When they finally reached Sheridan, they went straight to the courthouse. Judge Thorne received them immediately, his face darkening as he reviewed the evidence. "Poisoning water supplies is attempted murder," he said flatly. "And Morse participating while under court appointment. This is exactly the evidence I needed." He issued new warrants for Hartley, for Morse, for any identified as participating in the poisoning. More importantly, he froze all of Devereaux's territorial assets, pending investigation. "This won't stop him," the judge warned. "Men like Devereaux have resources beyond what courts can easily reach. But it's a start." A start. That's all they'd wanted. All they'd fought for a chance to build without the constant threat of legal manipulation and violence. The journey home was swifter, spirits lighter despite exhaustion. They arrived to find spring touching the valley green shoots, pushing through hail-scarred ground, streams running clear and strong, hope regenerating as stubbornly as prairie grass. That night, as the community celebrated their victory, Eli drew Nora aside. "You did it," he said. "David versus Goliath. And you won." "We won," she corrected. "All of us together." "Together," he agreed, and kissed her under the stars while fiddle music drifted from the meeting hall. But even in victory, they knew this was just one battle in a longer war. Devereaux was wounded, not defeated. The real test would come with the final hearing, now set for May. "Whatever comes next," Nora said against Eli's shoulder, "we'll face it." "Together," he said again, and the word was both promise and prayer. In the meeting hall, voices rose in a mixture of languages and accents, celebrating survival, community, and the stubborn hope that justice might actually prevail. Outside, the scarred land began its slow healing, watered by clean streams and warmed by spring sun. The storm had passed, but everyone knew more would come. That was the nature of the frontier. It tested you again and again, demanding you prove your right to stay. They'd proven it today. Tomorrow would demand its own proof. But tonight, they danced and sang and held tight to each other, a community forged in hardship and tempered by hope. And in the morning, they would begin again. Part 8, Season of Full Water. The May hearing arrived with spring in full flower.
Willow Valley had transformed from the scarred battleground of winter into a patchwork of green fields and gardens. The community had worked sunrise to sunset, preparing for this final legal confrontation, every claim documented, every improvement photographed, every testimony rehearsed. Silas Devereaux himself appeared in the Sheridan courthouse, no longer content to work through intermediaries. At 53, he cut an imposing figure in his tailored suit, silver watch chain gleaming. His eyes found Nora across the courtroom, and his expression promised retribution regardless of the day's outcome. All rise for the Honorable Judge Thorne. The elderly judge took his seat, his face revealing nothing. The federal investigator sat to his right, a younger man named Harrison Clark, who'd spent 2 weeks in Willow Valley documenting everything. This hearing will determine final disposition of lands known as Willow Valley, Judge Thorne began. All parties will have opportunity to present evidence. We'll start with Mr. Devereaux's claims. Devereaux's lawyer, Prescott, rose smoothly. Your Honor, we maintain that these lands contain valuable mineral deposits vital to territorial development. My client filed proper claims according to all relevant statutes. Claims filed after homesteaders were already established. Nora's lawyer interrupted. They'd scraped together enough money to hire James McKittrick from Cheyenne, a young attorney with more passion than experience, but a genuine commitment to justice. Squatters, Prescott corrected, without proper documentation. I have documentation right here, McKittrick countered, lifting a thick folder. Homestead applications, improvement records, tax payments, all predating Mr. Devereaux's sudden interest in these supposedly valuable minerals. The legal arguments flew back and forth. Prescott was skilled, twisting law and precedent to support Devereaux's position. But McKittrick had something better, the truth, meticulously documented. If it please the court, McKittrick said, I'd like to call Eleanor Galloway to testify about patterns of fraudulent claims across multiple territories. Nora took the stand, her father's surveyor notebook in hand. She spoke clearly, without embellishment, laying out the trail of burned homesteads from Kansas to Wyoming, the circle with an X, the same tactics, the same results, families driven off, land bought cheap. Objection, Prescott called. Hearsay and speculation. Overruled. Judge Thorne said, The witness is presenting documented evidence. Continue. Miss Galloway? She told it all. The fire that killed her father, Hartley's appearance in both Kansas and Wyoming, the attempted poisoning of Willow Creek, the systematic campaign to drive out homesteaders through violence and legal manipulation. And you have witnesses to corroborate? Judge Thorne asked. Yes, Your Honor. Tom Brennan saw the poisoning equipment. Liu Chang translated conversations between conspirators. Joseph Tallbear was wounded in the confrontation. All are here to testify. One by one, they took the stand. Tom's steady testimony about the acid barrels. Lou's precise recollection of overheard plans. Joseph, still moving stiffly from his wound, describing the battle in the hailstorm. But the most damaging testimony came from an unexpected source. Calvin Morse, the corrupt surveyor, had been arrested and offered a deal testimony for reduced charges. He took the stand like a man approaching the gallows. Mr. Devereaux hired me to falsify mineral surveys, he said, not meeting anyone's eyes. Paid me to find gold or silver wherever he wanted to claim land. Didn't matter if it was there or not. How many such surveys did you falsify? The federal investigator asked. 17, maybe 18, lost count. The courtroom erupted. Judge Thorne gavelled for order while Devereaux whispered furiously with his lawyer. Your Honor, Prescott said desperately. This witness is clearly lying to save himself. Then produce your own surveys. Judge Thorne challenged. Show us the valuable minerals that justify displacing 60 families. Prescott had no response. The minerals didn't exist, and everyone knew it. The residents of Willow Valley testified next. Grandfather Chen spoke of seeds planted and harvests gathered. Anna Washington described the school they'd built, where children of all backgrounds learned together. Astrid Bjornsson brought crop yields showing the land's agricultural value far exceeded any mythical mineral wealth. What we've built in Willow Valley, Samuel Washington concluded, is more than farms and houses. It's proof that Americans of all kinds can live together, work together, prosper together. That threatens men like Mr. Devereaux more than any gold strike could.
Objection, Prescott said weakly. Relevance.
Overruled. The character of the community is relevant to determining proper land use. The hearing stretched into evening. Finally, all evidence presented. Judge Thorne called a recess. I'll render my decision in the morning. Court dismissed. That night, Willow Valley's delegation gathered in the Sheridan boarding house. Hope and fear mingled as they shared a simple meal. We told the truth. Maria said,
That has to count.
Truth's got a poor record against money in courtrooms. Marcus replied, ever the realist.
Faith, Anna counseled. We've come this far on faith.
Nora found herself unable to eat, unable to rest. She walked Sheridan streets, ending up at the small cemetery on the hill. There, under stars, she spoke to her father's memory. We're trying, Papa, fighting the way you taught me with law and truth and backbone. I hope it's enough. It is enough. Eli's voice came from behind her. He'd followed, worried. Whatever happens tomorrow, you've already won something. You've shown it's possible to stand up to men like Devereaux. But if we lose the land, then we start over. Together. He took her hands. I've been thinking. Win or lose tomorrow. I want to build something permanent. With you.
Eli Redhorse, are you proposing in a cemetery?
I'm proposing wherever you are. Cemetery, courthouse, middle of Main Street. His smile was tender in the starlight. Marry me, Eleanor Galloway. Help me build a life worth living.
Yes,
the word came without hesitation. Yes to all of it, the building, the living, the fighting when we must. They kissed there among the headstones, life affirming itself against all endings. Morning came too soon. The courthouse filled early, townspeople drawn by the drama. Judge Thorne entered precisely at 9, his face grave. I've reviewed all evidence and testimony, he began. The law is clear homestead claims, properly filed and improved. Take precedence over speculative mineral claims, the poisoning of water supplies, the arson, the systematic intimidation. These are criminal acts that void any legitimate claim Mr. Devereaux might have had. Nora gripped Eli's hand, hardly daring to breathe. Therefore, I rule in favor of the Willow Valley homesteaders. All mineral claims are void. The restraining order against evictions is made permanent. Furthermore, I'm recommending federal prosecution of Mr. Devereaux and his associates for conspiracy, attempted murder, and fraud. The courtroom exploded. Cheers from the Valley delegation, curses from Devereaux's side. The businessman himself sat frozen, as if unable to process defeat. This isn't over, he snarled at Nora as marshals moved to arrest him. You think you've won. I have resources you can't imagine, and I have something you'll never understand, she replied calmly. A community willing to fight for each other. That's worth more than all your gold. They led him away. Prescott scrambling to arrange bail. Ben Hartley was already in custody. His reign of terror ended. The circle with an X would burn no more homes. Outside the courthouse, Willow Valley celebrated. Tears, embraces, prayers of gratitude in multiple languages. They'd won more than land. They'd won the right to exist as they chose. Long ride home, Samuel said, grinning wider than anyone had ever seen. Best get started. But first, there was one more thing to do. In the courthouse where they'd won their freedom, Eli and Nora stood before Judge Thorne once more. Marriage license. The judge's eyes twinkled. Well, this is a better reason to see me than the last witnesses. All of us, Anna said, and the entire delegation crowded into the chamber. It wasn't the wedding Nora had once imagined, no white dress, no church bells. But as she and Eli spoke their vows, surrounded by the family they'd chosen and fought beside, she knew it was perfect. By the power vested in me by Wyoming territory, Judge Thorne concluded, I pronounce you husband and wife, and may God help anyone who tries to separate what's been joined here today. The journey home was a celebration on horseback. Songs in different languages, stories shared, plans made for planting and building. At every stream they passed, someone commented on the clear water. At every vista, they saw not just land but future. Willow Valley greeted them as heroes. The entire community had gathered, tables spread with food, musicians tuning instruments. The party lasted well into the night, Danish folk dances mixing with Mexican corridos, Chinese lanterns lighting Irish jigs, Lakota drums beating rhythm for former slaves' spirituals. Look at this, Eli said, pulling Nora aside to the ridge overlooking it all. Look what you helped save. What we helped save, she corrected. All of us. Below them, the valley glowed with lanterns and firelight. Children of all colors chased fireflies together. Adults who'd been strangers 2 years ago now moved as family. The new barn built where the old one had burned stood solid against the sky. My father was wrong about one thing, Nora said softly. He said Willow Valley was a place to hide when things went bad, but it's not about hiding. It's about standing in the open and saying, this is who we are, this is how we choose to live. And fighting anyone who tries to stop us, Eli added. That too. She leaned into his warmth. Think we'll have to fight again? Probably. World's full of Devereaux. But it's also full of people like these. He gestured at the celebration below. And as long as there are more of us than them, we'll manage. A shout went up from the party, the call for the newlyweds to dance. They descended hand in hand, joining the swirl of neighbors and music. Liu Chang danced with Astrid Bjornsson. Tom Brennan spun Anna Washington. Children of all ages wove between the adults. As dawn touched the eastern peaks, the celebration finally wound down. Families drifted toward homes, carrying sleeping children, calling good nights in multiple languages. The new day would bring work. There was always work, but it was the work of building, not defending. Eli and Nora stood before their own half-finished cabin, the one they'd started during the winter storms. It still needed a roof, proper floors, real windows, but it was theirs, built with their own hands on land no one could steal. Welcome home, Mrs. Red Horse. Eli said, Welcome home, Mr. Galloway Red Horse. She replied, and laughed at his surprised expression. What if we're making new traditions? Might as well start with names. Inside their roofless cabin, they spread blankets under the stars. Around them, Willow Valley settled into peace. The creek ran clear and strong. Gardens waited for morning sun. And in the meeting hall, the documents of their victory lay safe proof that justice, however delayed, could still prevail. I love you, Nora whispered against her husband's shoulder. I love you too, stubborn woman who saves horses and valleys and hearts. Someone had to, she murmured, already half asleep. The stars wheeled overhead. Ancient witnesses to another chapter closed and a new one beginning. In the morning, there would be fields to tend, buildings to finish, children to teach, communities to strengthen. But tonight, in a roofless cabin in a valley that had chosen its own path, two people who'd found each other through fire and storm held tight to their hard-won peace. The West was still wild, still dangerous, still full of men who confused might with right, but it was also this neighbors helping neighbors, love crossing boundaries, and ordinary people standing together to say, no more. That was the true promise of the frontier, not gold or land or power, but the chance to build something new, something better, something worth all the battles that had brought them here. In Willow Valley, that promise lived and breathed and danced under stars, and in the morning, it would grow. Thank you all for listening to this story of love, courage, and community in the Old West. I'm curious. Where are you listening from? Please comment below and let me know what you thought of Nora and Eli's journey. Don't forget to subscribe to Wild West Night for more tales of the frontier. Hit that like button if you enjoyed this story. And press the hype button to help more people discover these narratives of hope and resilience. Until next time, partners.